We're going to call the meeting to order. Ask you all to please stand for the pledge. And we will have the pledge led by Trustee Sean Steele. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Trustee Steele. Okay, we'd like to now ask for public comments. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment? Okay. Is this Dean Creedon? Good evening, Dean.
Good evening. My name is Dean Creedon, and I am a senior here at Locust Valley High School. I am a National Merit Commended Scholar, National Honor Society member, an AP Scholar, and 1/4 Cuban, thanks to my paternal grandmother, Leila Serrier. Over the next few minutes, I'll tell you why that is significant. Each year, over 4.3 million students take the PSAT. Those juniors who score at the topmost ranks are identified by collegeboard.org for their distinction. Most of us are familiar with the National Merit Scholars Program. Each year, less than 16,000 students nationwide receive one of these designations. A lesser known but equally prestigious award also given out by collegeboard.org and also determined by the PSAT exam is the National Hispanic Recognition Program, or NHRP. In addition to achieving exceptional test scores on the PSAT, students must also be of at least 25 Latino or Hispanic ancestry. Annually, these NHRP candidates number as few as 5,000 nationwide. Similar to National Merit Scholar candidates, NHRP candidates may apply for specific scholarships not available to other students. In addition, on the Common Application for College, it is one of only 3 designations singled out on the front page for students to choose from. Based on the numbers I have just quoted you, you can see that both National Merit Scholars, who make up less than 1% of the total test-taking population, and NHRP candidates, who make up 1/10 of 1% of their peers, receive much more benefit in college application process than simply a monetary award. These designations alone are significant both for their rarity as well as what it represents for their academic achievement. Colleges and universities flock to these students, and it brings honor to the school district from where the students come. In the course of preparing for my college applications this fall, I came across the NHRP program. I was not familiar with it, and so I did some investigation to see what it was and how it was earned. I reached out to the organization that is responsible for administering the award. I was excited to learn that I had been identified as an eligible NHRP recipient the previous spring. They also informed me that I had missed the deadline for application and was therefore now disqualified. I let them know that I had never been informed of the award. We then determined that they had my wrong email address, their primary means of communication. Further, I found out that although my guidance department had received notification by mail of my award last year, there had been an error in communication, and I was never contacted by them about my candidacy either. Although both Mrs. Villa and Dr. Hunderfund tried to appeal my disqualification so I wouldn't be disadvantaged for errors outside my control, it was no use. College Board must maintain the integrity of its selection process, and application deadlines are a critical component of it. Flash forward a few weeks, I wanted to make sure no future college-bound student in my district be hit with the same unfortunate outcome. From this experience, I wrote the formal procedures which I have just given you regarding the internal control gaps which failed in this case. My grandmother has always taught me that through each of our personal struggles, we need to find a way to overcome, learn, and pass that knowledge on to ease somebody else's transition through a similar problem. I respectfully put forth these recommendations for your review, and I hope you will approve these procedures for the school year and beyond. While it is too late for my application year, I can only hope these suggestions are implemented so that the next candidate can take this opportunity of a lifetime and turn it into the first step towards achieving their educational dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Creedon. The board will take this under advisement and discuss it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Pashota?
Hi, I'm Rick Pashota. I'm here tonight representing the Falcon Pride Board of Directors. First, I wanted to make mention of the annual golf outing that we held recently, which was very much a success. I want to acknowledge all of the support we had from the community in making that event such a success, and thanks to all of the generosity that everybody sort of showed that night. Of course, that success is only makes a lot of benefit to the community when we actually can engage in projects to make use of the funds that we raised, and we're working very closely with our athletic director, Danielle Turner, on both near-term and longer-term projects that I hope everybody will be able to see as a result of that. So, secondly, also here representing Falcon Pride to show support for the board to revisit the idea of field turf facilities at the school. In addition to myself, there's a number of other members of the community that also come to show support for that. So just like to ask that you revisit that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pashota. Okay, there being no further public comment, we'll now move into the reports to the board. We'll start with our student representatives, Seamus Fallon, Joseph McNamara, and Sarah LeBeau.
At this year's homecoming, we saw the football team win a good game against the Malvern Mules by 1 point in overtime. The freshman class was able to win the annual float contest. The seniors won the most spirited hallway. Homecoming king, queen, prince, and princess were crowned. For the seniors, Roxanne Dillo and Ava Familetti won. For the juniors, Carlin Liebold and Matt Barnaby. The first ever homecoming dance was held by the senior class and was a great success, raising over $3,500. Thank you to the parents in the Locust Valley Central School District for their generous contributions. All the proceeds will go to the class of 2019's prom. Locust Valley's Safe Halloween is planned for October 29th, and we are excited to hold this event once again. Student government is also hosting a contest, and whichever class brings in the most candy will win $300 to go to their grade's prom.
So now we're going to give an update on the Wi-Fi. After meeting with Mr. Packard and Mr. DiClementi, we were able to resolve a lot of the student concerns. Mr. Packard and his team are currently in the process of installing a new Wi-Fi network for students' personal devices in the library, cafeteria, and senior ramp. This would give students the ability to contact parents and coaches as needed, but will not distract students from their schoolwork. The Wi-Fi will also leave no need for students to use VPN, giving better transparency as to what students are doing on their personal devices. So seniors and juniors have just received their 2-in-1 Chromebooks, a much-needed upgrade. While we are still not allowed to use personal laptops in class, the student body understands that making this reality is not feasible because the expansion of personal laptop use could cause issues on the instructional Wi-Fi networks. We think that the student body would be happy with these changes. The student body would like to thank Mr. DiClementi, Mr. Packard, and his team for the role in these positive changes.
And now for student concerns, especially the parent pickup situation. In reaction to recent policy changes in regard to parent pickup after school, parents have been parking in the senior lot to wait for their children. To get ahead of the rush, many parents arrive early, before the end of the school day, and sometimes even before ninth period. This creates issues with parking spaces, as some seniors come back to the school after a free period towards the end of the day, only to find that their spot is taken by a waiting parent. There are usually enough parents waiting to fill all the spots, so they begin to park perpendicularly behind the other cars parked in the lot, blocking them in and creating large jams. This concern is mostly specific to seniors, but there is also staff parking directly beside the student parking, and I can imagine that the staff that park there are unhappy as well. We hope that this problem can be resolved soon, since it seems that more and more parents wait in the senior lot every day, presumably because of a bandwagon effect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the board for the student representatives? I want to congratulate the students and the football team on the win on homecoming. It was wonderful. Okay, we'll now move into the superintendent's report. The superintendent of
Thank you
schools.
for me too, because as I communicated with Seamus, my husband has special interest in Malvern, and I loved rubbing in that we won by 1 point. Anyway, so moving right along. I want to thank the student leaders also, because I've heard from Mr. DiClemente and from the high school administrators and faculty how mature, how responsible all of you were, and how you dealt with the Wi-Fi issues, as well as with the Chromebook issue. And that was something that was handed to Mr. DiClemente. Obviously, he wasn't here last year when these decisions were made. And so you worked with him the way that you did, and you led, like leaders do, diffusing the situation and not exacerbating it. And I know from other students that you ran all kinds of interference for the sake of peace, harmony, patience, and optimism that it would be resolved appropriately. I'm profoundly grateful to you, profoundly. And I'll be sure to include that in your recommendations. Okay, so moving right along. I also want to thank you for homecoming, because homecoming was wonderful. I know the faculty was so proud. I know so were the parents, and I know the students were very grateful as well. I've been here 11 years. I cannot remember a finer homecoming, so thank you. Moving along, Falcon Pride, since you have representatives here. Falcon Fest was amazing. It was a landmark occasion for the 6th grade, and I know it made all the difference in transitioning the children and bringing two sides of the district together very quickly. And in particular, I have to acknowledge John Johnson, because I know the role that he played, the leadership role in doing that with everybody else's support. So thank you. Thank you so very much. Moving along. Now we go the tenure recipients. I already thanked and acknowledged them, as well as those that were involved in that, which was terrific, which leads me to the next part. Our students excel in so many ways, leadership being one, athletics being another, and then academic achievement. As Dean said, we have many students who earn national recognition. And so tonight, we're going to honor even more of them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our high school principal, Mr. DiClemente, who then can introduce the students who have distinguished themselves so well.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Hundafun. I first would like to say it's a pleasure to be part of a special night, starting the night with the tenure reception, and being a part of a marquee night for outstanding educators is something I'm honored and proud to be a part of. And advancing to student recognitions tonight is something that we are really excited about. I do want to commend and thank Dean for some feedback and things that we'll take into consideration, and I hope to have a conversation. And also the students, we will work together in discussing the parking situation. And the last piece before we go forward is Mr. David Dutra is here, and he's going to join us tonight, but he's the man behind the scenes in a lot of the Wi-Fi and Chromebook issues. So thank you to Mr. David Dutra. Tonight we're proud and pleased and honored to present students who demonstrate academic excellence in different areas. In order to recognize students, I'd like to introduce our administrative building team, Mrs. Lisa Chernetsky, Mrs. Michelle Villa, and Miss Jen Massa, if they would come up. Mrs. Massa and Mrs. Chernetsky will start the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Hundafun and the members of the Board of Education for inviting the IB and AP Scholar recipients here tonight for recognition. The IB Scholar Award is granted to students who earn scores of 4 or higher on 3 or more IB exams. We would like to recognize our high school students who have excelled in their IB coursework, which is demonstrated by their performance on the internal and external assessments. Of the 188 seniors in the class of 2018, 30% or 57 students are IB scholars. Excellent work. As our IB scholars graduated last year, we are sure they are at their current institutions continuing in the Locust Valley tradition of excellence.
Just a note that their names are up here on the front board, so you can check out who they are. There are many of them. Good evening. The AP Scholar Award is granted to students who receive scores of 3 or higher on 3 or more AP exams. With the AP Scholar Award, the AP program is recognizing high school students who have demonstrated outstanding college-level achievement through their performance on AP exams. It is an academic distinction that students may cite among their credentials on resumes and applications. Of the 800,000 high school students throughout New York State, 2.5% were recognized as AP scholars. At Locust Valley, 6% of our students are AP scholars. That's more than 2 times the state rate of AP scholars. We are very proud of our students here at Locust Valley High School. It is our pleasure to present our AP scholars to you this evening. So all of the AP scholars who are here in the audience, if you would please join us in the front of the auditorium. We would like for you to please introduce yourselves to the Board of Education, and we have a certificate we would like to present you with. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could turn and face the board. And then Joe's going to start us off, and I'll give him the mic if you just say your name and the grade that you're in, and then we'll go from there.
Joe McNamara, and I'm a senior.
Vincent Valley, I'm a senior.
Joanna Yu, I'm a senior.
Dean Creedon, I'm a senior.
Nina Chalone, I'm a junior. Catherine Simon, I'm a junior.
Sophie Lamette, I'm a sophomore.
Chris Dunn, I'm a senior.
Matthew Doyle, I'm a senior. Gage DiNatale, junior.
Christopher Bartel, I'm a junior.
Noah Pietrafesa, I'm a junior.
Dora McCormick, senior.
Aleem Merchant, senior.
Emma Lavodi, junior.
Michelle Shu, I'm a junior.
Patrick Fallon, junior.
Liam Reimer, senior.
Congratulations, each of you. We do have a certificate for you on the side of the auditorium. If you can come that way, grab it, and then meet in the back at the balcony, and we want to take a quick photo, please. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Ms. Michelle Villa, who will present the National Merit Finalists and the commended students.
Okay, it is my honor to talk about the National Merit Scholarship Program tonight. I would like to call up Dean Creedon, Aleem Merchant, and Joanna Yu. Okay, I'll talk about you first and then we'll have you come down. Okay, so over 1.6 million students enter into the National Merit Competition by taking the PSAT in their junior year. Of those, 34,000 students are named commended students. Although commended students will not continue in the 2019 competition for the National Merit Scholarship Awards, they have demonstrated outstanding potential for academic success. Their performance on the PSAT was exceptional, and recognition as commended students is a credit to them, their families, and of course our school. These students will receive official certificates from National Merit in the coming weeks, and so I'd like to take a moment now to congratulate them. Dean Creedon, Aleem Merchant, and Joanna Yu. If you want to just rise, I don't know if I want a picture. You want a picture? Yeah, come on forward. We're going to get a picture. Right there. Congratulations. I would now like to recognize Adit Duda, who has been named a National Merit semifinalist. National Merit semifinalists have the opportunity to continue in the National Merit Scholarship Competition. Of the 1.6 million students who entered the National Merit Competition, 16,000 of them were named semifinalists. 15,000 are then named finalists, and 7,500 will be named merit winners. National Merit Scholarships are $2,500, and in addition to that, students can also receive college-sponsored scholarships and corporate scholarships. College-sponsored scholarships are 4-year renewable awards ranging from $500 to $2,000 per year, and corporate scholarships are 4-year renewable awards ranging from $500 to $10,000 per year, or single payment awards ranging from $2,500 to $5,000. So congratulations to Adit, and best of luck to you as you continue in your competition. Come on forward, Adit. Congratulations. Picture.
If Joanna Yu could come down to the front. Joanna, I'm going to give you the option to stand by my side right here or to sit down, whatever you prefer. Okay? Stand, that sounds great. So, yeah, that sounds great. So, Joanna, why don't you come right in here? This way the board can see you and the audience. If you need to take over for me at any time, do so. Okay? Joanna Yu's diligent efforts, passion for success, and overall attention to pursuing all of the opportunities to achieve at Locust Valley High School have resulted in her status as the class salutatorian of our school. Joanna, with a weighted average of 107.29 and an enrollment profile that includes 4 AP courses and 13 IB courses, has earned distinguished academic status and honors among her class. In consideration of the meaning of salutatorian, to offer a greeting, Joanna is invited to address the students, staff, families, and school community at our June 2019 graduation ceremony. With a passion for philosophy and a future she described as likely pointed towards political science and possibly law school, Joanna's persona and actions reflect care, diligence, and appreciation. She is quick to speak thankfully about the opportunities that she feels that she has been presented with in school and in life, and grateful in the ability she has to define her own interpretation of the world. Joanna speaks fondly of writing through coursework and amidst her role in the school newspaper. She maintains strong connections to staff members, especially teachers in the English department, that she identified as having shaped her, not only as a writer, but as a student and person. In tune with a balanced lifestyle, Joanna is an artist, a musician, a reader, and a baker. As a captain of the cross-country team, Joanna is a driven athlete, often leading from the front. With a background that included English as a second language, Joanna spoke about the importance of all students finding community at school and feeling confident among peers. Please join me in congratulating Joanna Yu, our salutatorian, and for whose success in high school is surely reflective of tremendous dedication and the bright future that lies ahead.
Joanna, on behalf of the Board of Education, congratulations.
Aleem Merchant. Aleem? Aleem, same offer. I have a standing spot here or a seated position.
Go stand.
Great. Perfect. Aleem Merchant's diligent efforts, passion for success, and overall attention to pursuing all the opportunities at Locust Valley High School have resulted in his status as the class valedictorian of our school. Aleem, with a weighted average of 107.98 and an enrollment profile that includes 5 AP courses and 15 IB courses, has earned the highest academic status and honor among the graduating class. In consideration of the Latin translation of valedictorian, valedicere, and meaning to say farewell, is invited to address the student, staff, families, and school community at our June 2019 graduation ceremony. When asked about his drive for learning, Aleem credited his parents, who in his words, have always pushed him, taught him, and fostered his care. He shared that without his parents, he would be successful, but more so a drifter. Aleem speaks so favorably on his experiences and appreciation for the history and debate clubs, ethics and quiz bowl, theater performance involvement, and Odyssey of the Mind. He expressed his appreciation to his friends and classmates, as well as the staff, especially Ms. Shari Zinman from years ago, and more recently, Mr. Canavan and Mr. Harrison. Aleem is a student that enjoys chess, random trivia, and who can often be found searching Google for videos and text that will help him learn and understand both current knowledge and global perspectives among the world. Aleem was acknowledged for a perfect score of 36 on his ACT performance test. On average, 0.1% of all test takers achieved this score. He is active with cardiac research, leaning in the general direction of finance as a career, and tells of his most fulfilling moment in his life occurring recently as he mentored a young student how to read at the public library as part of a volunteer effort. Please join me in congratulating Aleem Merchant, a person who lives by his own advice. Absorb as much as you can, learn more, do more, on the well-deserved and impressive honor of being named our school valedictorian.
Aleem, also on behalf of the Board of Education, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiClemente. Thank you. And now we'll move on from the superintendent's report now to the reports to the board. We'll start with the audit committee. Vice President Karlstrom.
Good evening. The audit committee met on September 18th. In attendance were Mike Naraki and Sean O'Malley from Naraki and Smith, our auditors, Anna Hunderfund, Margaret Marchand, John Deltato, myself, and Brian. The audit for the financial statements for the year ending June 2018 were examined. We received an excellent audit report. Mike and Sean were very complimentary of the timely and accurate closing of our books and the cooperation between everyone. Thanks go out to Tony and to Donna for executing a smooth and efficient process. The findings indicated there were no material weaknesses, deficiencies, no issues of noncompliance. We continue to offer all programs without reducing services. All risk areas identified in the preliminary audit were, in the preliminary audit meeting were fully addressed, resulting in no matters requiring further investigation. And we are deemed a low-risk auditee. Oh, there you are, Donna. The auditors also acknowledge that under the leadership and effective oversight of short and long-term planning by Dr. Hunderfund, our district continues to be held in good stead. A presentation to the board will be made by Mike Naraki in November, right? I just don't know the date. 10th? 14th? Okay.
Thank you very much. Now moving to the Budget and Finance Committee, Trustee Deltato.
The Finance Committee met on September 5th. In attendance, Margaret Marchand, Jen Maselli, Anna Hunderfund, Tony Miliambro. If I missed somebody, I don't know who else was there. But we met. Oh, Brian was there. I'm sorry, Brian. We met and discussed our objectives for this year's budget and what's coming down the pike and how we're going to fund it. And we're meeting with the Facilities Committee next week to see what jobs we have to fund, and I'll report next board meeting on what we found. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move into the Facilities Committee that I chair. We held a meeting on October the 4th. Several committee members were there. At that meeting, we met with our district architect, H2M, their representatives, also Mr. Alionis, our Director of Buildings and Grounds and Facilities, and we discussed Tony Miliambro, and we discussed some of our ongoing projects that are happening. Communities and our staff and students are well aware. We have the ongoing vestibule project here at the high school. We have the parking lot project at Bayville Primary School. We have those are the two big ones. We did meet with them to talk about a timeline for completion, which the committee met on, and we have some recommendations. In fact, our next recommendation would be to meet on October the 16th, where we will continue to discuss and receive an update from our architecture firm, H2M, regarding the facility projects. We will receive more information at that meeting. We will also plan for an additional meeting right now for October the 22nd, where the board will meet. The board did issue an RFP, request for proposal, for architecture firms. So we will meet with them, we will conduct interviews, and then we will appoint at that time as well for a new architect, or continue our existing contract with H2M. So that is it on the facilities home front. We'll now move into the Policy Committee. Trustee Henris.
Thank you very much, Brian. The Policy Committee met on Tuesday, October 2nd from 7 to 8 p.m. in the Administration Building. In attendance was myself as chair, Jennifer Maselli, Sean Steele, Dr. Anna Hunderfund, Susan Hammerschmidt, Tony Miliambro, and Anthony Davidson. We began our meeting at Dr. Hunderfund's request to discuss our policy 110 sexual harassment, and 110R sexual harassment regulation. As background information, recently the governor signed a law to combat sexual harassment in the workplace in New York State. As it pertains to school districts, we are required to develop new sexual harassment prevention policies and trainings in accordance with the law by October 9th. Because the state guidance and draft policies were only recently released, the board was placed in a very difficult situation. Dr. Hundefund confirmed with our legal counsel that the policy adoption date will not be extended to provide school districts adequate time to comply with the law deadline. Our board policy for adopting policy clearly states that no official board vote shall take place on a policy at the meeting during which it is first presented to the board for consideration. As the chair, I had requested that our president and Dr. Hundefund consult counsel on guidance on how the board should proceed in order to comply with both the law and our district policy. Later in our agenda, under new business, we will be following our legal counsel's advice. The committee reviewed and makes recommendations to the board for our first reading of the following policies. Policy 115E, harassment and/or bullying complaint form. This policy is being updated to reflect the correct Dignity for All Students Act building coordinator contact information. Policy 5300.30, Code of Conduct, subsection reporting violations. This policy is being updated to reflect correct building coordinators contact information. Policy 6240, investments. This policy is being updated to reflect the correct designation of depositories' names and maximum amounts. Policy 6670, petty cash accounts. This policy is being updated to reflect the auditor's recommendation for increasing the maximum amount that may be made for a petty cash payment from $10 to $25. Policy 6700, purchasing. This policy is being updated to reflect the new federal regulations recently adopted requiring very specific language about purchasing procedures when using federal grant monies. Policy 8505, charging school meals, and Policy 8505.2, prohibition against meal shaming. These policies are being updated to reflect current changes in New York State legislation against meal shaming. They also add language to reflect the current process used by the district in mailing notices to parents and guardians in the primary language spoken in the household. Policy 8630, computer resources and data management. This policy is being updated to reflect the change in practice for assigning designees responsible for overseeing the use of district computer resources, since the district administrative position that was in charge of that is no longer a relevant position. There were also grammatical changes, such as capitalization and use of plural nouns made. Based on requests from either the superintendent, the Board of Education, or the policy committee, the committee also reviewed the following groups of policies and has decided to wait for the New York State School Board's compliance review for their suggestions before offering any recommendations to the board. We reviewed one policy related to homeschool students, 2 policies related to public comment, 3 policies related to parental involvement, 4 policies related to requests for information, 5 policies related to grading, and 9 policies related to substance abuse and tobacco electronic cigarettes use. Our next meeting is yet to be determined. We're waiting for the NYSBA compliance. Oh, all right. So I'm being asked to just give you an update for the rest of the board as well. We did speak with NISBA, and they are in the process of completing our compliance review. So they're almost done reviewing all of the policy and compiling their recommendations to us for items that may need to be updated or rescinded and whatnot. And Susan, thank you. There's, I don't know, 100 policies, it feels like, that you had, many policies that you had to pull and research, and just so much went into it, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving to the next board committee, the Professional Development and Board Training Committee. This committee met last night, October 9th. This board has done, so far since September, 3 trainings in the month of September. One was we met with Robert Freeman, who's the Executive Director for the Committee on Open Government for the State of New York. We met with our partners at the law offices of Guercio and Guercio, our district council, who went over roles and responsibilities of board members. And we also met with Ray Jorgensen, who is a wonderful person that we've worked with. This board has worked with twice so far this year. And on September the 22nd, we met with our district staff at a retreat off-site, and we had a nice opportunity to work very closely with our district team. So it was really, really a terrific day. Based on that, when the committee met, we have a recommendation to the board that we'd like to have a meeting on November the 6th. At that time, we will work with Ray Jorgensen on coming up with some board norms. We will also come up with some district goals. So that's the recommendation of the Professional Development and Board Training Committee. And if that's okay with the board, we'll move forward on that on November the 6th, Election Day. Is that okay with the board? Okay, thank you. One last thing, the committee also discussed last night sending out a survey to the board members. Trustee Steele is going to set that up. This will be a way of really collecting some information back, gives each board member an opportunity to reflect at home on some of the big takeaways that they had from the 3 big trainings we had in the month of September. And I also need to thank Dr. Hundefund as well as Susan, because Susan really coordinates a lot of this stuff, especially making the phone calls with getting Ray up here and all that. So thank you to both of you. We will now move on to the Public Relations and Communications Committee. Trustee Steele.
The Public Relations and Communication Committee meeting was held on Tuesday, October 2nd at 6:30 at the Administration Building. We started off with a discussion about the new athletics webpage, which will be presented by Dr. Danielle Turner tonight. So I'm going to let her handle that. We also discussed continuing education courses in the district. Tony Miliambro presented that. We discussed about expanding course offerings, checking the availability of alternative dates, including weekends, with both community members and staff checking to see what's available. We also discussed about the potential of offering additional prep courses for professional exams that include student prep exams for higher education, as well as potentially civil service exams. Pam Kaplan was also there, and she presented and helped us discuss the new issue of Sound Waves, which will have the theme of school spirit and Falcon Pride. Finally, we discussed electric signage outside of the Locust Valley High School, which has been discussed back and forth since last year's budget and facility forums. And unfortunately, due to several variances within Leadingtown as well as across the district, we do not find at this time to have electric signage to be the most viable option. We are always continuing to look into other available forms of communication to reach out to the district. The next Public Relations and Communications Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, November 8th at 6:30 p.m. in the Administration Building. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Any other reports from board trustees for the board tonight? I just will report out that I attended the Nassau-Suffolk School Boards Association resolutions dinner, and we were discussing the resolutions for the NISBA convention, which is coming up very soon. Okay, there being no other reports, we'll move into now unfinished business. Begin with discussion item number 1, the high school Chromebook and Wi-Fi update. I believe that's Ken and David.
And all three.
Good evening. We wanted to provide an update on the Chromebook status, so the distribution and the advancement of the Chromebook initiative, and also comment on the Wi-Fi. The students gave us a head start by making some comments, but I want to thank Mr. David Dutra, Mr. Packard, for supporting our students and school. I think it's important for us all to keep in mind we're trying to do two things. One is provide the best and most current access to today's tools for students to maximize the education for every student. And the second piece is we're trying to do the best we can to provide a personalized learning environment. So within the classroom, students can advance at their own rate. And we feel the Chromebooks are a great tool or resource to support that initiative. I wouldn't say that we ran into trouble, we just heard some concerns over the last 6 weeks. And some of the concerns had to do with some of the features among the Chromebooks, the distribution plan, and the communication. So we took a step back, we gathered, the meetings were among staff, leadership staff, building-wide, teacher representatives, administrative representatives, student representatives, central office, and parents. And we listened some more, and we said, let's go back and kind of revisit some things. And I believe we've taken some positive strides, and I also believe that we need to continue to listen and possibly continue to make some changes. But where we are right now is, as recent as today, students in the upper grades turned in a Chromebook and received an updated Chromebook. The updated Chromebook had unique features, but the three key features that students were looking for were writable, convertible, and touchscreen, so that you can write on them, which is key in some subject areas. You could convert them, meaning you could flip them over and use them in tablet form, and you could also use them as a touchscreen. So that was a key advancement for us, as opposed to a non-touchscreen, non-convertible device that students did not feel great about. The second piece is that we want to just make sure that we acknowledge that we have two types of situations that are happening among the 650 students. One is that we have students who are using a Chromebook that we issue in class, and then they're going home and using another device, and some are even using another device. So we don't have a rule that says you can't come into the school with a MacBook or an iPad. That's certainly not a problem for us, but we're supporting with the network the Chromebooks. Some students are going home and flipping over to another device at home because they're more comfortable at a desktop. And we also know that many students are just growing in their comfort level with the Chromebooks, and they're carrying them around all day, whether it's in a YMCA program or after school at home or on campus after school. So that's an important note for us. The third piece is ongoing review. So in the classroom, we believe that the instruction has varied, and students have been able to take field trips without leaving the classroom. Students have been able to participate in a lab without, a virtual lab, without maybe medical issues that have surfaced in the past. And most importantly, and what we're seeing most on the surface level, is the benefit of a collaborative atmosphere digitally, where students are working together, but in different locations. The last two pieces that we have here on the slide have to do with professional development and constant support. We have a team of 3 or 4 staff members that are really the go-to people for students and staff members in the building. That department, led up by Mr. Packard, those staff members, I feel confident that one of those team members, 2 here, 2 other people, I feel confident that they're always available. If we didn't have people that were available in the building to support with a loaner device, or to troubleshoot an issue, or to help a student or a staff member in terms of instructional programs or how to maneuver a program, then we would appeal to the board or central office colleagues and say, I think we need to discuss this. But right now, we feel confident in the level of support that we have for students and staff members. And just to go back to the final bullet, we'll have to continue to monitor this. I'm going to have ask my colleagues to speak technically.
Good evening. So some of the, I'm going to speak to the Wi-Fi. So just the Wi-Fi that we have right now, we have over 3,000 devices. We're up for 5 nines of, we design around 5 nines of uptime, which means 15 minutes of downtime for the entire year. That's what the design is. What we realize, or what we see now, is with the Chromebook, with the network, or the instructional network being 99% Chromebook, we're able to manage the security a lot better. And that was probably some of the pieces that we did not articulate clearly enough in June when we last spoke, is that, so I can talk to you a little bit about some of the things that happen behind the scenes and underneath, is that when on a network where personal devices are connected, there's really very little control over what those personal devices do. And we've had experiences in the past where our email address was, or our email server was actually blacklisted because we don't know, somebody's device who connected to the network sent out spam emails. They probably didn't know it was happening because it happens through malware. We learned very quickly that we could not have simple mail transfer protocol port open. I don't want to get too nerdy, but we shut down some more ports. And but that took a day to come back, so we were shut down. That was our first eye-opening experience to how fragile and how dependent on the technology we all were. This past spring, somebody had a device. I don't know whose it was, because by the time we isolated it, it was no longer on that IP address. And since we don't track all the personal devices on the network, it was, believe it or not, actually Google shut us down from doing searches. And it was kind of funny, because when Google doesn't respond, some people don't know what to do. When you go to google.com and nothing comes back, you just assume you don't have connectivity. But what it was is they were saying, we're not going to let you search. So Bing became very popular for a day, and it still exists. And so that was some of the things that were happening. The other things that were happening that were, and believe that, by the way, not having Google search, that affects instruction. And it really impacts the students and what we do here. Moreover, the more malicious things that were happening is that because students or people, I'm going to say, were on the network and we're required to filter, because we're required to filter by law, they can get around all of those by VPNing and tunneling through the network. And as my daughter, my senior daughter, tells me with great pride, is that she was the first one to have VPN on her phone as soon as her school let her get on the network. And she showed all of her friends how to do it. And I said, do you do Instagram all day? And she said, yeah, I do Instagram all day because I can. No. In a close district, but not here. And so anyway, so what happens is they tunnel through. Malware comes in. It's kind of frightening. We've been on the actually on our firewall to attest to. Dave can attest to this. We had for the last 2 days, Optimum has been out. That link has been. Those in administration might have felt it. It bounced, and it's intermittently coming up and down. So I can't have that on. It's a live network. So we have 3 links to the internet. When I say 5 nines of uptime, one can go down. We pulled it off. We still have 2 links to the internet. But when we lose an internet connection, or when something like that happens, it's a big deal. Like, it takes a long time and it affects instruction. I don't want to go too far. And anyway, so our solution with Wi-Fi to kind of stabilize the situation was we built out a separate and distinct private LV network. And it's available in the common spaces. And I think Dave, since Dave and his team, by the way, it's Dave, it's Jiju, it's everybody on his team that cranked out, 600, or I mean, actually it was about 1,200 Chromebooks since July, delivered them all, managing them all, running them, I mean, fixing everything. These guys are phenomenal. But he can talk to you about the physical network that we built.
Hello. Basically, we started from scratch. We have a new firewall, used an existing switch that we had in the district, and we have an internet connection, and it's basically a completely separate network. So the students connect to new access points, going through that switch and going through the firewall, and it's all separate. It is filtered, and that's basically it. It's just completely separate in order to keep it safe and secure.
Better? Okay. What they're not telling you is that 2 weeks ago, this did not exist. I mean, we had lots of meetings on this topic to figure out a way to reconcile this. And so the construction that had to take place and the infrastructure was done with warp speed. And so thank you. Thank you so much. You make it sound simple, but not simple.
So if you want to see, if you skip over one slide, and you see there's a picture of where the student Wi-Fi is for LBNet. Yeah. So it's in a high school cafeteria. It's on the ramp. It's in the library. Those are the common spaces. It bleeds out a little bit. Mr. Hogan has been very easy to work with on this because the cafeteria piece bleeds into the middle school cafeteria. And so we did a little bit of gymnastics in that case, but we got that covered. And so that's where it is. And then the last thing if you're interested, it's really physically, the last slide is just a picture. It's physically a separate network. It runs its own internet connection. So even if somebody does something that isn't good, it doesn't affect our production network because the addresses associated with that are not registered to the same servers. So, all right, so that's where we're at.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we'll move into the next topic is the elementary lunch and recess. Our elementary administrators.
Good evening. Just wait for Scott a minute. Can you give me a copy? So tonight we are going to revisit talking about recess. This is something that we did talk about last year. It was a topic of interest, and we did some research. So some of the things that we're going to talk about initially are things that we did research in the past, and I'm going to add a little bit to that. So, did you? Click. No, just stay right there. So basically, initially, this is what we had found about recess, that it is very important for students to have breaks in the day. It is important for them to be able to get up and move around. There is not, the American Association for Fitness, but basically they will say, it's a 60-minute amount of time in recess, but if you go district to district to look at their practices, the practices vary greatly what districts do in terms of providing recess and breaks in the day. And in my review of the research, I found that it was a combination of looking at recess as a recess kind of a creative playtime in combination with breaks in the school day as being a part of that important development for students. So there is one part of the research that advocates for just moving, and that means moving, if you're moving from class to class, or if you're moving from even within the classroom, say you're doing a station rotation. There's another part of the research that talks about creative play and the importance of having creative play for young students. There's another part that talks about fitness and the importance of fitness in that role of having those breaks for students, and the last piece is also mindfulness. So all of these fall into these three categories of benefiting students cognitively, emotionally, and physically. And you can see underneath each one, there have been very pointed things that are of benefit to students in terms of focus, in terms of developing critical thinking skills, in terms of building relationships, in terms of developing more creativity. So there's no doubt that there is a benefit to having the breaks and the recess in the school day. Right now, if we just look at our lunch and recess, right now we have a 40-minute lunch period that covers 20 minutes of recess, which is supervised by lunch monitors and some teaching assistants, and at 20 minutes each. The way in which we do that, sometimes it will vary. Some classes will have recess first and then lunch, and in A&P we do a rotation in the grades that have 4 sections. So on a specific day they may have recess first, the next day they might have lunch first, the next day they might have recess first, the next day they would have lunch first. The exception to that rule is if you have, in my building in particular, we have a grade with 3 classes. So in that case, the students would all go together, either to lunch or to recess. And I believe Bayville does the same thing in terms of a rotation.
In the intermediate building, each of the grades has recess first. We were able to schedule that. I know when the numbers get higher, when you're in the 90s to 100 students on a grade level, sometimes you have to split and have half the classes outside while the other half are eating. Otherwise, if it's a chicken nuggets day, you never get through the lunch line.
With the primary schools, the kindergarten students, especially in the beginning of the year when they're still learning the routines and procedures of the school day, they are notoriously slow. They have not gotten used to how do we go through the line, what are our choices, how do we punch in. So just getting through that 20-minute lunch period for them, it takes them a little bit longer. So we've played around with that at A&P, having them have recess first, and then we switched it a little bit right now to have them have lunch first until they get used to the routines and procedures so that they can at least all eat. And now, we'll switch back to having them have that recess time first. So there are, some issues that come up that are developmental issues that we need to address with the children. Other breaks that we have in the school day, of course, we have, something I read in the research is the importance of just moving. We do have the movement from class to class. We have movement within the class, again, because we use a lot of center-based learning in the elementary level. So the children do get to move. I don't think we have an issue with moving in the school day because the students are moving within the classroom and they're moving throughout the building. And then there's an approximation in terms of minutes. Our specials, we have our PE, we have 120 minutes a week, which is the state mandate for PE, and we have that 3 times a week. The other specials where you will see a lot of movement, of course, is in music, because it's inherent in the rhythm in the dance, and in just the way children, especially young children, learn music. Also art, there are times when you're going to see the students sitting in art, there's times you're going to see them moving, there's times that they're going to be standing working at projects, there's times they're going to be working together, so there's a lot of different movement in there. We also have snack time in the classroom, which is sometimes a more unstructured time, and the teachers do have approximately 10 minutes of unstructured time in the classroom with their kids where they might do a mindfulness activity with the kids, they might do a movement activity, they might do something related to breathing, they might do something yoga related, and that would vary from classroom to classroom. we certainly, understand the importance, and we want to take a look at how can we incorporate more unstructured time into the school day, and we are going to do that by taking it back to our site-based teams, by talking to our parents, our school representatives, just our school community in general, to see are there any additional ideas that we have. There's certainly a lot of research out there. There's a multitude of ideas and ways to incorporate it into the school day. So we're just going to look for those suggestions, and we'd like to bring that back to you next month after we touch base with all our constituent groups.
Well, thank you very much.
Did I miss anything?
This is
Go ahead.
This is a discussion item. Any questions from the board? Trustee Steele, anything?
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay, I have a
You're
number
welcome.
of questions.
Sure.
All right, the first of which is, you mentioned, I believe, the American Association of Fitness, correct, is one of the studies?
Let me make sure I said the National Association for Sport and Physical Education. I looked at that specifically. That's what I had looked at. And they talked about, they did point to movement in the hallways, engaging the mind and body, and so I did look at that research.
Okay, and you mentioned some other schools. Were we just sticking around with local districts or districts outside of Long Island?
I did reach out to one local district, and the local district that I talked to, which was on the island, they had one physical education period for their class per week with a phys ed teacher, like a 40-minute period, and they used their recess period, and during their recess period, they used their physical education teacher for the 20 minutes because they had the 40-minute. So that's the way they did it, and that was the way the principal described it to me as their very creative way of meeting their 120-minute mandate, which we meet with our 3 times a week of PE. So in essence, compared to that particular district, we have more because we have our 3 times of PE, plus we have our 20 minutes of recess, plus we have the approximately 10 minutes of various unstructured activities that would be going on in a classroom.
Okay,
Just compared to that, for that particular one.
Thank you.
If you
So-
called another district, they would probably have another way of doing it.
Right, thank you. You mentioned, or at least I'm hearing movement used
Yes.
a lot, the word.
Yes.
But for the purposes of this research and for this study, how would you, and I'm not trying to be abstract or give you a hard time, how would you define movement?
To me?
Well, for this study.
From what I read in the studies, I mean, there's a couple of ways that you can look at movement. One is you're just getting up out of your chair and you're walking from point A to point B. You're just moving. I mean, the very act of moving in and of itself, first of all, it gets your, they talk about getting your mind moving, giving you a break. So, I mean, I think the very act of just moving is one piece of it. And then there are other ways to move in a more structured way. If you're moving in yoga, that's a different way. If you're moving in a mindfulness activity, that is another way of moving and giving children a chance to move and yet calm their mind. I mean, the idea is for them to have not just have one academic period after another academic period where they're continually receiving information without having a chance to break away from that, especially young children that need a chance to, like, we call it getting their yayas out. Like, they need to get them out and they need to move. And we try to provide them with, we give them those opportunities, to get them moving. Because the learning and the ability to maintain what you learn is not as effective when you don't have that. And I could say, I mean, they say we're focusing on children. I could say it's true for adults. Because if I'm sitting around for 2 hours, if I'm sitting around for an hour or two, I'm not going to be as effective as if somebody gives me a break in the day and gives me a chance to move. I think it's just part of human nature, personally. But that's not in the research.
That's you personally,
That's
okay.
me.
That's a great segue into my next question. On your 5th slide, additional breaks in a typical day.
Right.
You note specials as a break. But several of those, not several of those, all of those are activating in controlled settings,
Right.
students doing activities. I wouldn't necessarily call those breaks.
I don't necessarily look at them as breaks per se, but I look at them as for me, look as times that children are moving. Like when you're in PE, it is it's probably, besides recess, the most unstructured. It's structured and unstructured because the children are learning about the cooperative team play games and playing, but within that structure of what the physical education teacher is setting forth, the students are moving, and many times they're moving in an unstructured way because a lot of the games that focus on team building allow them to have like free range of motion. So I'm not looking at it as a break in the day, like as you're saying, and I understand that. I'm looking at it more as that's a time when kids are moving. Music is a time when kids are moving, and it's movement within structure. Does that make sense? Because that's how I was looking at it, not like this is a formalized break, like we would have a 10 minutes of a 20-minute recess period. But there are moments of unstructured time within the structure set forth by the teacher.
Okay.
In which kids move.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just two more questions. Is that okay with the rest of the board? Okay. I'm sorry. You mentioned earlier with the lines in the cafeteria. You mentioned chicken nugget day, pizza day. But on the chart here, on slide 4, you have 20 minutes for recess, allotted for recess,
Right.
20 minutes for lunch. So
Right.
if I'm standing online for chicken nuggets and that goes over the allotted time,
Right, correct.
is my total time for recess practices and lunch 40 minutes still? Is it capped?
We still have to work within the schedule of format. However, if you're taking longer, like if you're a particularly slow eater, and we run into it with little children a lot, we do give them extra time to eat, and then they'll go outside after. But
For how long?
Yeah, right, correct. I mean, it does sometimes run in, but that's very much at the beginning of the year you might run into that more but I understand what you're saying, and we do run into that sometimes, and it does impact.
So you could have somebody who's only outside for 5 minutes and then come right back in?
Well, we rarely, if ever, have that. I would say that I might have a child that misses, if they miss a few minutes of their recess, but it's the exception rather than the rule. Most of the children most of them eat pretty quickly, especially if you get to the intermediate school. Where you would find some slower eaters is perhaps at the primary level, but not the greater majority of them.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, nice job explaining. One of the things when, in the beginning of the year, it's definitely slower. And Sophia did mention that it's the exception, not the rule. We have monitors or teaching assistants that are consistently reminding a small number of the children that, you know what, you really need to stop talking and you need to start eating. That happens with a handful of kids, they just don't eat. It's social, and we get that. So we're trying to groove them to, hey, you gotta eat, you gotta eat, you gotta eat. And there are a small number of kids, you could tell them 10 times, they're not eating, they're still talking. So it's really the exception. We're not talking many kids at all.
Right, and honestly, if we find a child where we think that eating in them in particular is a problem, then we're going to be reaching out to their parent. And if it's an issue of we feel like perhaps they're not eating enough or what they should be, then we'll reach out to the family and we work with them.
Okay, thank you. And my final question, my absolute final question, I promise.
Okay. It's okay.
What is the relationship between recess and disciplinary policy? And is this still a part of the larger research that you're conducting?
I can't say let me speak to you. The first part of your question is that still part of our practice. We use it sparingly. I can say it honestly. I can say up till now I haven't used it at all. We're in the middle of October and I have not given a recess detention, so they're keeping in from recess. If we do have to use it, because there are occasions when student may make a choice that's not a good choice, and there has to be a period of reflection. We work with the parent, we make sure the parent is on board if we're going to use it at all during that period of time. And then there are some other strategies that we can use. For example, if it's a student that is not making a choice on a consistent basis, then we might look at other things that we do in school, like establish behavior plans and things like that. It's not something that we like doing. With the smaller children, we have taken maybe 5 minutes off to have a discussion, to reflect, to talk about, well, what could we have done different that we didn't do differently?
5 minutes within the 40 minutes.
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes, and it is within the 40 because within the school day, there's only what you have in instructional time, the instructional periods, and then there is that lunch recess period. So the conversation has to happen somewhere. So it's either going to happen during that time or, so a lot of times it happens in the classroom with the classroom teacher, or in the classroom with the classroom teacher and me and the classroom teacher. Sometimes it happens with the psychologist. So there are a lot of different times that those conversations happen. So we are trying to, and I won't say it's 100% because I don't think that's accurate, but it's much, 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 much less and very sparingly used compared to what I say may have happened, the way that we did it 2 years or 3 years ago.
But it's still part of your research moving forward.
We still have to look at it. We still have to look at the research, and we still have to look at other ways to accomplish how we want students to reflect on what they do and make, if they've not made a good choice, what is the best way for us to move forward to make sure that they're reflecting and they have strategies. I mean, the idea at our level is we need to focus on good choices and strategies, so we try to give them those strategies. And it's not always, the recess period may not always be the best one to do that in. There could be any number of settings where we could do that within the school day.
Thank you
If
very
I
much.
could just jump in, Sean, that I've asked Anthony to research, which he has done, and the administrators are going to have professional development on alternate ways of interacting with the children that are not necessarily punitive. And so there are different alternatives that are going to be discussed and explored, and then they'll be tailored to what is developmentally appropriate. I know that you guys are going to work on this through your site-based teams, and then it's going to have to go through a centralized lens, because otherwise you run the risk also that there's going to be idiosyncratic behavior going on that's really not consistent. But there is going to be professional development targeted specifically first for administrators, and then we'll expand it to the faculty about alternate ways of helping the children to make better decisions without resorting to punishment, including recess, not only recess.
Thank you. Anyone else on the board? Trustee Maselli.
I appreciate your presentations. As a point of clarification, I just want to say I think that the concern the board has is not with movement from classroom to special, or even with snack time, which I think snack time is important. I think it's specifically with the length of time for lunch and recess. So when you say 20 minutes for recess and 20 minutes for lunch, I just want to be clear, is that including lining up in the classroom, walking down to the cafeteria, lining up in the cafeteria, walking out to the...
It's 45 minutes in total that they
so
have?
It's 45 in total?
Yes.
Okay.
So just to clarify, the teacher's lunchtime for that is a 45-minute lunch?
Correct.
Okay.
And in terms of how you're evaluating it, you had said the site-based teams. How many times have you met so far?
I can speak for the Bayville side. I know we had our first meeting I lose track of the date. It was last week.
Okay.
And then we have another one scheduled for this month. So the point that you brought up is about the time is something that definitely came up. So we're going to continue to talk about that and research that. And I'm sure that'll be part of our presentation when we come back in November.
And how will you be researching it? Like what kind of data are you going to pull from? Or?
don't know yet, other than I know certainly we have to get to some other districts, not just on Long Island, but other parts of the country. I know personally I've looked at some other districts in other parts of the country that have some very interesting ideas, and that's something that I'll bring back to the team to see if that's something that they want to support. And again, I'm just on a side note, we're going to bring back everything we possibly can. Should we move in the direction of trying to incorporate more break times, like real break times, like let's say they go outside for 10 or 15 minutes and just play. The challenge that we're going to find is what's going to give. There's a lot that we have to accomplish during the day, and something is going to have to give.
I appreciate that. I know it's not easy. And then the other question that I had, Dr. Gary, you mentioned that some of the classrooms are doing yoga in the classrooms?
Not like a whole yoga session. They may do something that is reflected of, like breathing is a big part of yoga, so they may do some relaxation exercise. I know that Mary Beth Miller, who is our phys ed teacher, is looking at doing a yoga unit within the phys ed period this year, which is something that she and I talked about last year. So it's not like a whole yoga session,
So
but
it's done
it's more of a relaxation.
Gym, basically.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It was a part of the mindfulness. It was part of mindfulness that we learned. And we have given these teachers, we had professional development with the teachers last year to give them strategies that they can use in the classroom to incorporate mindfulness practices. And, certainly we will, expand upon, what, they were presented with a certain number of strategies, but there are other strategies as well that we will research and pass on to them.
Thank you. Any other?
Yeah, sure, Dorothy.
Just so that the PD that the teachers just had last week, that was given by an ADHD coach on ADHD and executive functioning, did go over with the teachers a lot of strategies they could use in the classroom for those brain breaks. She gave them, she did the Simon Says activities and all kinds of things that she gave to them to use in their classroom. And I know some of my teachers have begun to use those things within the classroom. I think
Dorothy, they can't hear you.
The teachers just completed a full day of training with a ADHD coach doing executive functioning, things like that for the classroom. One of the things that she went over with them quite a bit was taking brain breaks and things like that for the children within the classroom. She gave them a lot of different strategies to use, one being Simon Says, taking that break, doing the movement, allowing the children to conduct those things on themselves. So there were quite a few things also incorporated in that I know some of the teachers are now incorporating in the classrooms too. So,
Thank you. Anybody else on the board? Trustee Marshall?
I just want to clarify, kind of piggybacking on what Jen was saying, that at least from my perspective, what's intriguing to me is that 17 years ago I taught in Syosset in a kindergarten class, and we still had rest time after lunch. And I guess we've produced in the past 17 years kids that have the stamina that can go all day now at 5 years old. And I think that sometimes we have to remember that we are with, I know you guys remember it every day, with really little kids. And it's not just the movement, but it's also the social emotional component, and specifically learning how to have conversations, learning how to interact with their peers in an unstructured or non-instructional period of time, which is so important because life has changed so drastically in 17 years for children specifically, that art of conversation, that art of interpersonal communication is actually going to be, if you can hone it and teach it, it's going to be something that's more valuable in the next generation than it was ever valued in, say, our generations. And I just think that that when you're looking at recess and lunchtime, to maybe perhaps always keep that in mind and find time. You know, kids' attention spans are not 40 minutes. Adults aren't. I think when we all had our professional development day, Ray Jorgensen said he loses an adult between 5 and 8 minutes. After that, we're not paying attention. So I think that we could possibly really look into our instructional days and time periods and maybe just take a little bit, and maybe find a different way to matriculate social development into the school day. That's kind of where I'm seeing all of this headed, and having a little one, and also just hearing at the pickup line what parents' concerns are. So, anyway, but thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you every day for taking care of my kid.
Did your teams meet with the site-based team yet?
My team is actually meeting on Friday.
Okay. I sympathize and I understand this is a huge task. The one question I have that maybe the team can consider, does the physical setup of our cafeterias allow for maximized time during lunch? So you talked about the chicken nugget day or brunch for lunch day, when that line might be really long. You may have more students sitting on a lunch line rather than sitting down and eating, and again, maximizing that time. Is there any way that we can physically restructure things that will allow them to quickly get what they need if they just want a cold lunch and not waiting on the long line, so they can be seated and eating and ready to move on to the next piece?
We can look at that, definitely. And just so you know that when on any day, whether it's a long day or a long line or a short time, and with the younger ages, we have adults that help them. They help them through the line and help them to, just to learn the routine. But certainly we can look at that and see if there's another way that we can structure it. Happy
One
to
of the
do that.
things I would ask is that, and Anthony I know is going to be involved in this, that the outcome of all of this is that the research be synthesized and then site-based teams can discuss it, but it has to be coordinated and articulated. And it has to be predictable and consistent, so that if my child has Brian and another child has Kerry, that I'm guaranteed that there is going to be consistency in the time that my child has. And a lot of it has to do with professional development, because as a teacher, I need to have a repertoire, but then that has to be coordinated and articulated by grade developmentally. And so you may not be there in November, but I think that's the outcome that the board is seeking as well. That it not just be, well, this is what we've exposed everyone to, and now we'll just hope for the best. But that in fact there is going to be predictability and consistency.
Trustee Henris?
Thank you. That echoes part of what I was going to say. I think I'm hearing from our questions the importance and the appreciation that we have for the investigation into extended opportunities for unstructured play and recess as it is. Something I hope that is being considered that might not have been touched on as well is the process, in addition to the physical location, layout of the cafeterias, but the process in which the children, are helped and assisted in going through, finding ways to help them learn that sooner, to prevent the delay in the line. And in addition, I know that there is feedback from the community, and I mean, it's just perpetual feedback always, that the students are pressured to eat. That perception is reality. And for the students who are coming home saying, they just keep telling me I have to eat, I have to eat, I have to eat, they're feeling pressured to eat and not converse with their peers at their tables. So I think that's just another added thing that we need to be attentive to. And perhaps it means professional development or something else, but we need to be mindful that mealtime in my house was conversing over our food. It's pretty primal. So I hope that we'll find ways to help address that as well. And the stress, the specials, I think Sean spoke to, and really all of us, they're mandated classes. They're instructional time. We've got to, I just appreciate that we're looking into other ways to incorporate stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have one? Yes, I'm so sorry. We have one more from the audience.
I just wanted to say that thank you for the comments and the questions. Sure.
And if you can also just identify yourself. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Meredith Wachter. I'm a parent in the district with a student in the middle school, Locust Valley Intermediate, and 2 children in elementary. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation and for the questions from the board. Since this has kind of seeped out into the community as a topic, there has been loads of parent opinion, interest, and concern about what is currently happening and what the investigation will involve and how much transparency there will be about it. So I think just no opinion here, just a request for transparency as far as the site-based teams move, that there should be some involvement with multiple, similar to the committee for the optimal school start times, that it's enough stakeholders involved, that there's a wide variety of opinions, and it's just so you know, there's definitely a lot of movement behind this being something that is addressed.
Thank you, Ms. Wachter. Point well taken. We'll pass that on. Thank you.
Of us. In hearing the public comment and thinking about what we've been saying and the process that we'll be using, last year at one point there were a lot of expressed interest in discussing facility projects, and we held a facility forum. Perhaps part of the strategy for elementary might be to have some type of town hall or opportunity for greater people. There's something to consider in the process. Yeah, so they can share their comments. It can be recorded by the people collecting their data, not necessarily for us, but for the administration.
Good point. I think the board can discuss that. Point. Yes?
They could also poll the parents too, if possible. Something that might be considered polling the audience, poll the parents and the children if they thought that was necessary.
Well, it could also be done on a building level, that the polling could take place and then shared with the site-based teams to consider and then presented to everybody here, the synthesis, when you come back in November. Because I think it makes it more manageable. Yes, the principals will handle that process. Yes. Well, I think Kerry was asking about the involvement of parent council. My recollection is that the administrators indicated they're going to be actively involved with parent council. And so what has to be formulated, though, and we'll have to do it on a district basis so it's coordinated, as well as the administration of the survey, first the construction of it and what it's going to involve, and then how it is. SurveyMonkey may be a good way to do it, but it can be school-specific. So, Anthony, if you can help with that, that would be just great. And then everybody will have their own input. That'll be terrific.
Okay, thank you. Any other last-minute discussions on that? If not, we'll move out of unfinished business into new business. Our first item is the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA overview. Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson and I actually attended a conference together, met with Ira Schwartz from the State Ed Department.
Yeah, Ira Schwartz is the Associated Commissioner for the Office of Accountability for New York State. I do want to start with an admission. For some reason, I really want chicken nuggets. Starting out with ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. It is a federal law that outlines how states will use federal money in public schools. ESSA has new requirements, but it is not new in totality. ESSA actually was one in 1965. It was the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. It evolved sometime later into No Child Left Behind Act, and now today we have ESSA. So some of the same parameters are in play, but there have been changes as well. So some of those things in terms of New York State, every state had to submit a plan relative to ESSA in 2017. New York State's was approved, and this year the implementation is underway. So there's some tenets that are implemented, others that are still in process. And there are several desired outcomes. One is support for all students. So one way to achieve that is they're looking at subgroups. A subgroup of student is a student that is an identified class. So that could be your English language learner, it could be a student with disabilities, but they've expanded those subgroups to include migrant youths, homeless students, and other classifications that haven't been used in the past to make sure that the data that they're looking at does account for all different types of students and that we can give support in that regard. It's also aimed at a well-rounded, culturally responsive curriculum. And there have been next generation science standards that have come through New York State. There is a framework through social studies that has been implemented, and now they are following up with an ELA and a math curriculum that is being implemented slowly, and I'll talk more about that as we go forward. There's also a measure of student engagement, and this includes identifying chronic absenteeism and school climate. And then we also have focus of growth over time. So that's one of the emphases, is it's not just looking at a student in a snapshot, but measuring how a student does on standardized assessments year one, the next year, the following year, how that student compares to similar students in year one to the following year and on. And also a focus on graduation, so it's expanding to really look at 4, 5, and 6-year graduation rates. I didn't skip transparency, not to be transparent. I actually left it for last because Mrs. Meliambro is just going to make a comment about that.
Sure. As part of the ESSA reporting, we're going to be required to report actual expenditures for 2018-19 on a building-by-building level. So that will be required to be reported in December of 2019. So at this point, we don't have the guidelines on how we're supposed to do that, but we've begun to recode all our salaries by building because that's the biggest component of our expenditures, and we know that we'll have to report those. As a matter of fact, the board will see a lot of budget transfers on the September report that are reflecting all these recodings by building. And the rest of the guidance will be out this fall, we're told.
And it's a huge amount of work. The transfers are crazy to try to get this into what it has to be. And if not, we're going to be like the sexual harassment policy in crisis because they don't tell us until the 11th hour. So Tony's really taking the initiative on this, and I'm so grateful, even though I know it's a pain in the neck for her. And if I see one more transfer, I mean, it's just constant. So, but thank you.
In terms of the implementation timeline for the new standards in ELA and math, and the standards really map out the skills and the content that we wish to see, or the state wishes to see in grades K through 12. The state's plan is to raise awareness. So currently the standards are out. And their intent is to raise standards this winter, raise awareness this winter through spring. I will tell you that our coordinators and directors have already raised awareness. They've already introduced the standards to staff. They've looked at what they call a crosswalk. A crosswalk is comparing the old standards to the new standards and the changes there. So they're ahead of the game. They did that before I came, so I can't take credit for that. The state's going to offer professional development. We've been doing that, but they're really going to offer it in Moss come this winter and spring. And then the implementation is targeted for September of 2020 with new assessments to follow in spring of 2021. And that really is for, the assessments are 3/8. The curriculum relative to high schools, there is no timeline set yet. We know that it will not be before spring of 2021. We can anticipate it'll obviously be later than that. Schools will be held accountable for different measures, and schools currently are being held accountable for some of these measures, and that's not necessarily new. There are some new indicators. So scores on English language arts test, math, science exams, that's K-12. Progress for English language learners, so on those standardized assessments, how have students progressed in Locust Valley compared to students in the state, and compared to themselves over time. And then there's chronic absenteeism. Again, that is students who are missed 10% of instructional days, time within a school year. And we know that chronic absenteeism is a marker of students who are struggling. It's an early marker. The additional indicators for high school will include social studies, the Regents exams, graduation rate, and then what they call a college career and civic readiness index. And that really includes, really the question is are we giving students access to college level coursework and to the most rigorous courses that we have. And that includes Regents diplomas, Regents with advanced distinction, IB, AP programs as well. There are future indicators. The state is gathering baseline data this year. Next year, we'll look at out-of-school suspension rates. There is going to be a school climate survey. It is not mandated yet. Initially, the state talked about mandating it for next year. They have not been able to figure out how to quantify it and therefore hold schools accountable. So that is in hold, but we are looking at that currently to understand it, to know what value it could have for this district as well. And then the other is they're going to look at high school readiness, among other factors. Again, the state has not figured out how do you determine that as an accountability measure. How do you measure high school readiness for students who enter ninth grade? Schools will be ranked based on accountability measures, so there are different rankings than you would have heard in the past. You would have heard of a reward school, and we are a reward school. But they're recognition schools, so these are high-performing or rapidly improving schools. Schools in good standing, just that, satisfactory performing. Target support and improvement schools. Now, these are schools that overall are fine, but they may have low-performing subgroups, not in one area, across the board. So if a school has students with disabilities across the board not performing well in many different areas, then they would have a targeted support plan that they would be required to give to the state. Makes sense, targeted. And the other is comprehensive support and improvement. These are the schools that rank in the lowest 5% compared to all schools in the state. This ranking is given out every 3 years. So schools that are here, they have to give comprehensive plans and work with the state, the BOCES, and on in order to make sure that they're showing growth and progress for all the students. There is an additional requirement. It's alarming when you read it, but I'll explain it a little bit more because we've gotten some more information, that all districts must show progress towards a 95% participation rate on state exams. Across Long Island, the participation rate is nowhere near that. Initially, when the plan was drafted, it included possibly reallocating funding so that we would promote or figure out a way to offer a plan that we would bring people back to the test. The state has backed off of that since. What it has talked about is showing progress, so improvement towards that participation rate. We don't, and in my unanswered questions, we're not sure what that improvement is. The state really hasn't defined that as of yet, what constitutes improvement. And also, over time, it really requires that you show no growth for 2 years at first. Then if you're identified, you put together a plan for the state, and then you have 3 years to improve. So it's not as immediate as was first announced. Our implementation plan of some of the aspects that I've discussed, we always review student and school data. We're looking at, we look at discipline data. We look at accountability measures. We look at students performing on the Regents exams. We look at where they are struggling with standards. Absenteeism, we run reports daily to try to identify that because we recognize that that is a first indicator and an early sign. So that's something that's not new to us. It's something that we definitely honor and value. Offering access and opportunity to advance coursework, we do that. And if you look at the measures that the state has drafted, we far exceed the expectations with the IB, the AP, and even the advanced reasons designation is really coveted in these markers. Offering professional developments, and as I talked about, the math and English coordinators began that last spring, and this is ongoing. And it will continue to go on, even with the implementation as we look back and retool. And we are reviewing the school climate survey, as I said before. There are unanswered questions. As I pointed out before, actually, I didn't point this part out. The accountability measures come in 3 forms. One, there are measures of interim progress, which basically is looking at your school, what is the measure the state determines you must grow each year? So that's your interim progress. Then there are long-term goals. The state establishes 5-year goals for schools and for the state as a whole. And then there are end goals. Those have not come out. They're drafted, they're not official. We were told that they would come out at some point this year. So it's hard to work around that without having the answers at this point. How do they define improvement towards a 95% participation rate? As I pointed out before, what will that mean? Will that be 1%? Will it be 0.1%? And what impact will opting out have on accountability measures? Will they factor that into achievement scores that students aren't taking the test and measure us in a way that could really slant the data against a very high-performing district? Fortunately, in talking to the state, not that it was a great response, but the response really is, well, it's not uncommon. There are a lot of great districts, particularly on Long Island, who are going to be in the same position as you. And how will our students be impacted by growth measures in areas in which we already excel? So the drafted long-term, end goal, not 5-year goal, but end goal with an undetermined date for the state is that all students in the state, all schools have an 85% graduation rate. We already exceed, not the 5-year goal, we far exceed the end goal with an undetermined date. So is there a ceiling effect? Are we going to be negative impact? How do you show growth when you hover, around 100% every year? It's very difficult to demonstrate. Are there any questions?
Okay, any questions from the board? No? Okay. Any questions from the audience? It's a discussion item. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move into the next piece, which is the new athletic webpage. Dr. Turner.
Good evening. Thank you for having me today. I wanted to specifically thank Pam Kaplan for her support in this endeavor, Dr. Hunderfund, obviously, for trusting me with this process, Mr. Steele and the PR committee for allowing me to present to this tonight, and also just a quick shout out, thank you to Falcon Pride for putting on an awesome, awesome golf outing. I can't imagine the background information and planning it took, and it was just an awesome event. You guys do a great job, so count me in next year with the same team. So last year, I was actually at the board meeting where the new website was launched, and it's beautiful. Our website is absolutely beautiful. The main page is fabulous. It's easy to navigate. However, when I went to the athletic webpage, I really felt that it didn't reflect our athletic department. It was a little bit difficult to navigate, a little unstructured, and I really felt that as a district and as a department, we could represent ourselves a little bit better. I really wanted our website, and particularly in athletics, to be a one-stop shop, not only for parents and athletes, but also for coaches and anybody that was just to visit the site on any given day. As many of you know, I know many of you have children that participate in athletics. Changes on rainy days can be a mile a minute. Things can happen often, changes, cancellations, who's practicing where, what time, are we inside, are we outside? These things happen minute by minute. Previously, in the past, the way that those changes were posted to the website was that myself or Paula would call Pam or email Pam. She would then put it up for all to see, which was great. And then 2 minutes later, oops, the game got changed back to a different time. So then I would call Pam again, and she would repost it, and then 10 more changes would happen. And it was just kind of, we're spinning our wheels and taking 10 steps to nowhere. So by having local control of our own webpage, myself and Paula and the coaches can kind of have real-time updates to parents, to students, and we have control over what's being shown. So it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to, well, maybe I'll just do this, talk and navigate at the same time, but did I mess it up? Okay. So just to give you a quick background, and I did present this to the PR committee last week, this would be, and again, this is going to launch tomorrow, so this is now the front page of when you click the athletics button on the main site. this would be the page that it takes you to. So I'll change the picture so every so often for every season, so it'll be really personal to our own athletic department with the seasons. You can email myself and Paula right from here. These are active live email links. We'll have a health and physical education tab where I'll explain our health teachers, our physical education teachers, a little background on our curriculum. We have a concussion management tab. All the paperwork for our concussion management policy is right there for you, as well as a return to play protocol sheet and doctor's clearances. Teams, every team will have their own webpage, which I will show in just a minute. Any resources that the community or student athletes or coaches or parents might be privy to, we have an NCAA, I'll click on this real quick just so you can check it out. So we have a link to the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, a live link to the 2018-19 Guide for College-Bound Student Athletes. A lot of times we'll get inquiries about coaching, and right here we'll have everything that you need to know about obtaining a New York State coach's license, so that's on there for anybody interested in potentially coaching with us. Text message alerts, we do have a group me, or remind rather, for the athletic department, so parents can sign up right here. Any other forms in the athletic department that you might need, we do have a Falcon Pride application on this website, as well as a live physical form. Directions to athletic contests. This is actually really convenient. It's directions to every school district on Long Island, so if your student or your child is playing down in East Rockaway, you don't know how to get there, we have live directions right there for you. And a couple other links that I think we'll just find useful to parents and students. As you continue along, there's a register link, which I'll actually speak about in a few minutes, Family ID, which is our new online registration platform, and then of course instructions on how to register since it's going to be new to the community. One of the great things about this website is, again, all of this information in here is completely controlled by myself and Paula, real time. So as you can see today, all athletic contests and practices are on as scheduled. If there was something to be changed or canceled or rescheduled, that would happen on a daily basis in real time, posted to the website. Parents, athletes, and community members can see that as soon as I post it, which is really great and convenient. Here, since the winter season is coming up, anything that parents and student athletes need to know about the winter season is right here. Selfishly, this helps us in the office because we get less phone calls, and everything is right here on the athletic website for parents and students. So we'll tell you exactly when tryouts start for all sports in both high school and middle school. And then something that we were getting a lot of phone calls about in the fall season was, well, great, I know that football starts August 20th, but where should they go? Who do they see? What time is it? So here, every season, you'll have a full list of sports, start times, dates, and where to go on that first day. So going back to the main site, we have here a link to Core Course GPA, which we explained at some of our grade level meetings. This is a way for students to track their progress with the NCAA Clearinghouse. This is free to our students, so we posted a link right here for you. Right here, this is the seasonal based, so anytime there is a rain delay or inclement weather, teams and coaches and students know exactly where to go on any given day. This way we're not worried about the Wi-Fi and our coach texting us and where do we go, what time, do I have practice today. If it's raining, varsity volleyball is in the gym from 3:45 to 4:45 on a Wednesday, or in the gym from 4:45 to 5:45 on a Wednesday would be JV football. So everybody knows where they're going at all times, if it's raining, if it's too hot, or for some other unforeseen circumstance. Going a little further down, and I'm sorry, I'm having a difficult time with this mouse here. Going a little further down, this was something that I think was kind of requested. I don't know why this isn't showing right now, but what you would see here is just a live link to all the sports events going on in the district at one time. I'm not sure why this isn't loading at the moment, but typically it'll show all the sports games going on in the district all at one time. On the individual team pages, you'll have individual calendars for teams that will just show just those teams' calendars, so it's a little bit less crowded. And then down here, we do have a Twitter feed, so I'll constantly post pictures or updates or anything else that's going on in Locust Valley Athletics for that day. Usually I like to try to promote some of our homecoming games or big games that the kids are participating in, and that's all here right on the website. This was last Saturday. So just something nice the kids can look forward to and see themselves on the website. I just wanted to quickly go up here and talk about the Teams tab. This will really be the bulk, I think, of where high school, or I should say parents and athletes go to get their information for their team. Every team has their own website, so if I was to click on the wrestling team, I could email the coaching staff right from here. There's also their live links, so we can click and email the staff right from there. Rosters would be live right here, as well as your game summaries that we're used to is on our current website as well. Coaches have the opportunity to post any updates or live updates they have for the season right on their page. And again, as I mentioned earlier, every team will have their own calendar. So if you didn't want to look at the big cluster of games that are going on the website, the front page of the website rather, you can go right to the team page and your calendar for that specific team will be right here. Okay, we go back home. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's going to be very easy to navigate. I think it represents us a little bit better. I think it's easy for the parents and for students to kind of see what's going on. Like I said, I really wanted it to be a one-stop shop for athletes and parents to get all the information, regarding athletics as you could and just in one website. The other thing that I was hearing from some of the members of Falcon Pride is that we do have a lot of alumni and people in the community that just want to come by. They don't have students that are athletes, but they just want to come watch a game one day. So on the website, again, if this would load properly, you'd have the full list of all games that are going on right on the website. So you could say, hey, there's a basketball game, maybe I'll go down. So that was another benefit for us. So we're really excited because this launches tomorrow, and hopefully it goes over well with the community.
Excellent. Any comments, questions from the board? Anyone from the audience? If you could come up to the podium, please.
Hi, Maureen Lee Antonio. I live in Locust Valley. I'm just fangirling. It's amazing. It's amazing because the parents are always trying to figure out where the games are. In the past, I've gone to other schools' websites to get the information. So it's amazing. Amazing. Thank you.
And I know Maureen will appreciate having gone through lots of children, but the other is too that, it was impossible for Pam, as much as she tried to keep up with this. So what I heard from Maureen and from other friends in the community was that it wasn't current, therefore it wasn't accurate. So it was like, go there and then do what? Become frustrated because you didn't know what was happening or where. So, and the nice thing with Danielle is this was not an expectation that was set for her. This was an initiative that she chose to take. So it was like, remove the obstacles and let her go. And so I am so grateful. It's just a blessing to have that occur in that way.
And I was going to, at the end of my presentation, just thank you, Dr. Huntefeld, because I know I've been here for 3 months, and I'm typically one that I'm typically one to kind of live in the house a year before you start knocking walls down. But this was really something that I thought could help not only the athletes but the parents and the community. And I wanted to thank you and also Pam for allowing me to do so. And I'm staying here because I have one more.
The online athletic registration.
Okay, so one of the other things that I noticed as I started here was the constant flow of paperwork that usually starts about a month and a half before the start of every sports season. Student athletes would come in and say, I have to get a physical form, I need an IHH form, I need an emergency card. There was this plethora of forms that the students would need, and I didn't really know which form was which. Paula was getting a little frustrated. The clearance nurse wasn't in sometimes. So I could see the students getting frustrated as well. So something that we've used in previous districts that I thought would really be a great fit here is something called Family ID. So I had approached Dr. Huntefeld about it, and she had asked me to do some research, and I'm happy to say that we're finally moving forward. So as I mentioned, again, if you've seen the athletic office 30 days prior to the start of any sports season, you may or may not see Paula in a flood of papers, just drowning in physicals. And she gets frustrated. I could see her frustration, and it kind of is just a time waster. If you're one of those parents or one of those students that, oh my gosh, I forgot to hand in the physical, we'll do it the first day of tryouts, this might be the line that you see outside the nurse's office. And what's frustrating about this is that not only do the nurses get frustrated, but the kids get frustrated because they miss their first day of sports seasons. oh my gosh, the nurse doesn't come back until next week, and now they're missing 5 days of tryouts and practice, when really there's just a better solution for these students to get registered and cleared before they start athletics, rather than waiting on a line for 4 hours or polo drowning in paperwork. So there is this program out called Family ID, and what it is, it's an online registration platform. And as I mentioned, I'm pretty familiar with it, and it's growing rapidly across the Northeast. So if you look in here today, or look at this slide, this is currently where Family ID is implemented and used in all of these schools throughout the Northeast. I would say that it's probably even more so on Long Island currently, because as I've been talking to other athletic directors, they've actually all just signed up to start it this winter season. It's typically implemented in the winter seasons because it's the fewest amount of sports teams, so it allows for a more gradual transition into the program. But nonetheless, it's gaining in popularity. So one of the many benefits of Family ID is that it's a huge time savings to families. So when you enter in your information, and again, there's a link on the new website to register, parents will actually fill in all of the information for their students one time. So the New York State physical form, as well as the IHH form and the emergency card, as well as our photo release form, our code of conduct form, that's all on that page for you. Parents no longer have to fill out all of this paperwork prior. Every single piece of paper that we have in athletics is all on that form. And parents only have to fill it out one time per student. If a student chooses to register for the next, let's say in the winter, now they're registering for a spring sport, all of it autofills. So they only have to do it once, it's done for them. All they would have to do is update any information that would have changed between seasons. No more print and return. Families can register their students without returning any forms. So the only possible form that you may have to return to the nurse's office, but you don't have to, would be that original physical form. So the paper physical that needs to be redone every single year can either be submitted directly to the nurse, or actually through Family ID, you can take a picture of the physical and upload it directly to the website. So to register your student, you never ever have to enter the school building once. There is a family dashboard, so parents can have access to all the information past and present that they've registered or that they've entered in the past. Again, you don't have to turn in your paperwork during school hours. You can register your student for sports while you're down on the beach in Florida, which is great. There's no deadlines. You don't have to be physically at the school or pick up anything from the school. You can literally be anywhere as long as you have internet access. Family ID is always on support, so they have 7 days a week customer support for parents. So one of the semi-drawbacks of this is if a parent or a student is having issues accessing their information, we can't do anything as a school district from behind the scenes. You'd have to call Family ID. What's great about Family ID is that they are always on. They are super helpful. I haven't had one negative experience with Family ID in terms of customer support or technical support. Families raved about them. We did use Family ID in my previous district, and all of the parents just raved about how great their support team was. Benefits to our athletic program. We only receive complete registration forms, which is kind of a big one. So a lot of times, students will come in, Ms. Turner, here's all my stuff, we're all excited, everything's good to go. Mom didn't sign it. Or, you forgot to have, this one section filled out, and unfortunately we have to send them back home. The registrations that come through Family ID have to be completed. So we don't even see them until they're 100% complete, which is great. The only time that they would get kicked back if the physical is expired. So the nurse would be able to actually email the parents directly from Family ID saying, sorry, your student wasn't cleared, they just need an updated physical. Again, parent never has to come into the school. It's all via email and through the program. Customization, as I mentioned earlier, we were able to customize the form to meet Locust Valley needs. So on our registration form through Family ID is our specific code of conduct, our specific concussion management protocol, and our specific student-athlete agreement. So that's all on there for you, and without checking the box and saying that you agree to the terms, you cannot complete the registration, which is, again, just huge for us as well as for parents and students. And it's easy report sharing. So I can actually set up reports and share them directly with the coaches. Coaches get an email every single day of the season of who's cleared and who's not. Also in that email is all emergency information, so the parents don't have to fill out those yellow emergency cards anymore. Emergency contact and information is directly sent to the coach's email every single day of the season. So if a student drops or is uncleared, that information will also be noted in the daily email that coaches are getting in their report, which the coaches are excited about. So the implementation timeline, what are the next steps to Family ID? It actually goes live tomorrow. and we are opening tomorrow with the wrestling team being able to register for the winter program starting tomorrow. I do plan on conducting a couple of Family ID information nights for parents. So we have October 25th for the winter season, and then February 12th for the spring season. One of the questions that came about in one of our discussions was, what if a student or a parent doesn't have access to a computer or to a phone or something like that to register? I kind of slightly said back, well, everybody has Chromebooks now. So I think we'll be able to take care of that. Parent sign up, as I mentioned, begins tomorrow, and it is open throughout the year. The only time that it would close is if there is a deadline to the sports registration. So typically we would open it and keep it open until 2 weeks into the season. After that point, it's closed, and it can only be opened by me for some extraneous circumstance. Clearances by the school nurse will start obviously tomorrow. So if a student registers tomorrow, they can be cleared tomorrow. And then obviously throughout the school year as students register. Something that the nurses are excited about as well is that they can be at home watching TV, clearing students from their laptops. They don't have to physically be in the building to start clearing students as well. And student athletes are ready to play by the winter season. 11-5, as long as they're cleared, we're ready to go. It's all set. And that's it. I know it's a lot. I talk fast, but I'm excited about it. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. But it's a great program, and I think it'll be really taken very well here. I think parents can appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? We'll start there. Trustee Henris.
Thank you. Just with the family information nights, will you also consider an on-site registration? So if somebody there to guide them, walk through the process if they bring their Chromebooks?
Yes, absolutely, and I would encourage that for both nights. That'll be posted as well. And actually, a lot of the teams have asked me to be present for their first team meeting, where I know, for example, Coach Anaya is having his team meeting next Friday, I believe, and he asked me to come and kind of do a little spiel for them with their Chromebooks, and I'm happy to do so. So
That's
absolutely.
wonderful. And does it have a multilingual capacity?
So it does.
And Brian had that question, and so did some of us.
So it can't translate directly, the program can't translate directly, but Family ID, if we translate, we'll put up those forms directly next to our own forms. So we're in the process of doing that right now.
Three of us had the same question. Great.
Danielle, I just want to confirm that when the kids go to an outside physician for their physical, we can just take a picture of it and we can upload that onto the Family ID.
Correct.
Okay.
Something that we are going to, for next year, that I'm really going to start to, I think, push a little bit is using that New York State physical form. A lot of times students will come in with a physical form from a doctor that isn't necessarily a New York State form. We really need the physicals on that particular form, which you can actually download right on Family ID on the landing page. So when
That's going to matter for me because my kids graduated, so you don't have to, I don't, yeah, it's all good.
So this is the landing page. So when you click on Family ID on the new website, this would be the landing page that it takes you to. And as you'll see, the two programs opening tomorrow are Locust Valley High School Winter Sports and Locust Valley Middle School Winter 1 Athletics. Right here is the New York State Health Examination form. So if you or if you weren't able to pick it up from school, you can actually download it right from the website and print it out. And this would be the form that we would ask doctors to use when conducting their physicals.
Anything else? Dr.
I know I
Hundefund.
had spoken to you about the NCAA requirements.
Yes.
So where are they going to be on?
They'll be under the resources tab.
Okay, that's fine. So they'll be
Here,
accessible
but also
there.
I had just added the core course GPA. So the students can actually click right here, and there's a QR code to create a link, to create an account for core course GPA, which outlines exactly what they need, and they can register an account for free.
Thanks. And Michelle, thank you, because you and Pat were so helpful in helping to navigate the waters with the NCAA driving us crazy over a program issue. But it's great that parents have, Maureen was so involved in that, with having access to that information ahead of time. And don't
Yes.
ever apologize for speaking quickly. I think it's a wonderful attribute.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody in the audience? Another shout out. Thank you for the shout outs. Okay. Okay, we'll move now into the next order of business, which is the first reading of the following policies. I'll read them out, and if there's any questions, we'll answer them. If not, we'll move on. The first one is policy 0115-E, harassment and/or bullying complaint form. The next policy is 5300.30, reporting violations. Policy 6240, investments. Policy 6670, the petty cash accounts. Policy 6700, purchasing. Policy 8505, the charging of school meals. Policy 8505.2, the prohibition against meal shaming. And finally, policy 8630, computer resources and data management. Thank you for allowing me to have the first reading of those policies. Ms. Hammerschmidt. They will be, point of order, they will be posted on the website for the community's review as well by tomorrow. Thank you.
The tab called Policies Under Review.
That's right. Okay, now we need to move into the next portion, which is the suspension of policy 2410. This was explained under the policy committee. The board must act tonight on a regulation for the state ed department. Our policy, however, requires us to have readings of our policies before the board moves. So, in interest of that, I'd like to entertain a motion to suspend policy 2410. That will read as follows. Be it resolved that pursuant to policy 2430, suspension of policies, the Board of Education hereby temporarily suspends policy 2410, the formulation, adoption, and amendment of policies for purposes of dispensing with the requisite 4-week consideration of a policy prior to adoption, repeal, or change of same, in order to adopt revised policy 0110 and the accompanying regulation and exhibit relative to sexual harassment. Such policy suspension is for the purposes of complying with the legal requirement that the sexual harassment policy 0110 and accompanying regulation 0110-R and exhibit 0110-E be adopted in the amended form on or about October 9th, 2018. Yes. Do we have a motion? A motion by Trustee Henris. There is a second on the motion, Vice President Carlstrom. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we now need to move into the last portion of new business, which is the adoption of policy 0110, regulation 0110-R, and exhibit 0110-E, sexual harassment, which is found in consent agenda item. We're going to put that into consent. So that'll be acted on in the consent agenda. Anything else for new business? Okay, if not, we'll now move into the consent agenda. Do any board members have anything they would like to discuss in a consent agenda? Discussion. Anyone have anything they would like pulled from consent agenda?
Yes, I would like to have the personal action report pulled to be voted on separately due to a family connection.
Okay.
It is.
It's one item within the PAR.
I didn't want to make it too difficult, so you want me to pull it then?
But we'll pull the whole PAR and then we'll act on it separate. Okay, do we have a motion to pull the PAR? Do we have a second on that motion? Trustee Henris? Any discussion on that? All in favor of pulling the PAR from the consent agenda, please raise your hand. Trustee Marchand? Okay. Any opposed? So carried. So we'll now act on the consent agenda. We'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented, with the exception of the personnel action report. We have a motion to accept the consent agenda. We'll go to Trustee Maselli down on the end. Second, Vice President Carlstrom. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll now entertain a motion to accept the personnel action report as presented this evening. We have a motion. Trustee Marchand. Second. Trustee Maselli. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The record show 1 abstention, 6 in favor. It carries. Thank you. We'll now move into public comment. Is there any public comment? No? Okay, there being none, I'd now like to entertain a motion for the board to convene an executive session in order to discuss the retirement of a specific individual, the contracts of specific non-represented employees, and confidential matters pertaining to particular students. This is a portion of the school board meeting that is not open to the public. If any action is required to be taken, it will be done so in public session. We have a motion to go into executive session. Trustee Steele, second. Trustee Deltato, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Get home safe, everyone. Thank you.